So just for a quick recap, this is a continuation of the public hearing regarding impact fees. When this was previously discussed, the item was sent to the Planning Commission to get an opinion, which we have in our packets. And that is in front of us this evening. And what it says is it was sent from our town planner. It says the Charlestown Planning Commission met on May 14th, 2025 and discussed the advisory opinion request from the town council regarding the potential repeal of impact fees from the town of Charlestown. Many of the Planning Commission members were in agreement that the impact fees should be collected, but recognized that the identification of specific costs that could be directly attributed to future development is difficult, given the relative lack of infrastructure in the town of Charlestown. It is the recommendation of the Planning Commission that the moratorium pertaining to impact fees should remain in effect until the town establishes a capital improvement plan and required needs analysis. When the study is complete, impact fees should be reinstated. The Commission recommends that the town retain the existing funding for schools and consider the potential impact of development on recreation and open space when calculating the impact fee. The Planning Commission passed this advisory opinion with a unanimous vote. So that was in the memo dated May 19th from Sean Henry, our town planner. Okay, yes.
So Ruth Plattner, a member of the Planning Commission, the vote was unanimous, and also our alternates were in agreement. So there's no disagreement, no other opinion on that. Just because we have a 7-member board, 5 vote, but that was unanimous in every sense. The impact fee, we had developed in 2000 or 2001 or 2, early 2000s, an open space impact fee. It was done under the newer version of the law. I'm not sure if there have been changes to the law since then, but it's updated from the impact fee that was done on the schools, because originally it was you were only allowed to do it on schools. They added some things. We did another impact fee that was for open space. I have draft versions of that. That was before the town had email accounts for everybody. So you would tend to get draft things from the planner or from a consultant, but when you got down to the end, it was on paper, and things didn't always come. So what's in my mail is a draft. We did bring it to the council in 2000, between in the council that was sitting between 2000 and 2002, I believe. It was Karen Lytle was on the town council, and Harriet Allen and Jim Cairns. So I don't know if we found anything in the records, but if you wanted more, there's probably a later version of this, but I do have the draft version. It uses proportionate share. So there's this, I heard you having discussions about what do you attribute to a particular subdivision. The impacts for there's an open space plan and an open space impact fee. The open space plan looks at, and again, you don't have to do an open space impact fee, but it's just that there's an example of this kind of impact fee. You could do it for something else that has kind of a universal application. So every subdivision, since we don't have sewers, impacts the groundwater. And so the idea there was that as you protect open space, you're protecting groundwater and you're offsetting the impact. So every development has septage that they're adding to the groundwater. Every subdivision has impact. So when you're looking at the impact of a particular subdivision, you're looking at how many lots are in that subdivision or how many dwelling units. So proportionate share is just the number of dwelling units that are going to be in there, kind of divided by the total number of existing dwelling units in town. What is this adding? What is the proportion? So you're not looking at how much sewage is coming from that particular subdivision. It's just what is the proportionate share. So that's what this was based on, and that's how you look at the impact as a proportionate share. And then The fee was just the open space impact fee. And so in the open space plan, you decide how many acres you're going to buy. And that's based on the inventory of all the existing open space, all the land that's left, and what the town's decision was. And again, not, it's just, this is just an example. So there's a plan in which you decided over the next 8 years what you're going to acquire. And then you divide that by the total dwellings in town, and that gives you a proportionate share. And then that's multiplied by a price per acre. And that was how the open space fee was calculated. And I don't know what the first calculation was, but it was in that $1,000 range kind of thing. So anyway, there is an example of how it was done. If you did it for recreation, it would be somewhat similar. You decide in your plan, so if you have a recreation plan, you decide what you're going to spend over the next so many years, and you divide that by the total dwellings in town, multiply it by the price, but it's not going to be a price per acre. It would probably be price for something else. I don't know, but you come up with a fee, and so it's not that complicated because those are kind of universal things. And before you were talking about impact on roads and impact on some other infrastructure, which it gets more complicated. So that's why we suggested the school, because that's pretty well known. It's whatever the school is spending on capital improvements. So if you had a bond, if we'd built a new school, so that's how that's done. We have an example for open space, and I think it would be similar for other kinds of costs. So, and on the other kinds of costs, the town should have, one of the things we talked about, the town should have a capital improvement plan. But again, if you go with open space or recreation, I'm not sure it's needed because you have to come up with a plan for those particular things because the fee is particular to open space or recreation. Whereas if you're building a new police station, I don't know if that qualifies. So again, this was from a later version of the law, whether it's the last version or not. It was prepared by Sam Shamoon, who was a consulting planner, who I'm sure Peter knew. He's now deceased, but he was someone who did this for all the towns. So he did all. I think he did all the impact fees for schools for all of the South County towns, or the Cherahoe towns. So that's to give you the things we talked about.
So, Ms. Plattner, this proposal for the open space, would that be to acquire open space?
Yes.
So the problem you have is the town charter is very specific in the manners in which the town can acquire property. If it's less than 50,000,
Yeah.
then the council can just do it. If it's more than 50,000, then it needs to be approved by the voters. So it would be very,
Or
very different.
use bond money.
Right, but you're not talking bond money. You're talking about using impact fees.
You would use all different pools of money. So this only gives you a little piece.
Right, but my point is this, you can't say that unless there's an amendment to the charter. So the proposal you're talking about acquiring open space would also require a change to the charter in order to accomplish what you're proposing.
I don't think so. It wasn't required then. And
So
this goes into
it specifically says in the charter, the only way that property
I
can
know
be
that.
acquired and what you're proposing.
No.
Yes, it is, because you're saying take it from the impact fees. That is not what's spelled out in
The
the charter.
impact fee is not going to pay for any piece of land. You would have to do that in coordination either with the Nature Conservancy or you'd have to get DEM grants, and you would use some bond funds. You have $1 million in bond funds.
So your proposal isn't to use the impact fees?
No, the impact fee is used. So the impact fee is not huge. It doesn't fund the entire purchase. So if you have a plan to buy land, then this helps to fund it. It goes into an open space impact fee fund, and you have to spend it within 8 years. but it's not going to fund entirely a piece of property. And you have bond funding that you can always use
Yes, so we,
until that's gone.
yeah, it would definitely require revisiting the charter, so it's not as simple.
But
as
again,
you're-
this wasn't meant to be a debate on whether or not there should be an open space impact fee. It's
But-
just
right,
that
but-
this is an example that you can use for something else. And as long as you're using,
Well, my point is that if you're telling us
put it
that,
on the, you can put it on an FTM as well. It's just that this fund is never going to pay 100% for anything because you aren't getting. So for the school thing, we got $800,000 over many years, but not over 8 years. So if you need to, if you need to be spending this within an 8-year period, it's not going to 100% fund something unless it was $50,000, because you're going to get, your fee is not going to be $20,000 per house. It's going to be in a much smaller range. So
yeah,
But-
go ahead, Councilor Mark.
So I'm just trying to understand this. When you first, before Deb's question, you were talking about the open space portion. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, how does that actually add any money to the town? In other words, you're saying, okay, well, if you're gonna have a development and we gotta protect the groundwater, we'll charge a fee. That fee is not gonna change the amount of sewage that's output, and we don't have sewers, so it's still going to be
Well-
reliant on all of the planning and zoning and wastewater management rules and regulations we already have. So now you're saying that money could be used in that fashion to purchase land to offset that, to protect the land next to it, if you would. But since there's no way that that's going to even make a minuscule dent in purchasing of land, I would think that by doing so, by having an open space fee, that we'd almost be using it as a cudgel to get the town to spend money to purchase land, and I don't think that that's something that we'd really want to, I wouldn't want to support.
right, so there was an open space plan that goes along with this, that the town would have made that decision. So
Correct.
and you have $1 million bond fund. Yeah.
But again,
One comes before
that's- sure,
one
but
has
that's
to-
Let
not the
Councilor Mark finish
that's
asking the
not,
question.
in my view, the reason to keep these fees. That's a whole separate issue. And, to keep these fees intact or even put a moratorium on them, just so that maybe sometime down the road, we can incorporate that into a whole separate open space issue. I mean, I sat with the town tax assessor and the town administrator when we discussed this. And when we went through the numbers and the cost, it didn't make any sense in my view to keep this in place. Because there was so little revenue generated. Now we're saying, well, there's so little revenue generated that maybe we'll use it as a down payment or, for lack of better, purchasing land. I mean, it doesn't even cover anything now. So I don't see that as a rational argument for keeping it in place. That's my opinion.
Well, with the very small fee you had for schools, you collected $800,000. So that's not a small amount. It's just,
Right.
it didn't happen all at once.
But that 800,000 was over the course of 20+ years. So I don't want anyone to leave here with the impression that the town collected $800,000 in the past year.
No, I said over the entire period.
Yeah.
According to
So
the
the entire
tax
period is
assessor.
20+ years.
Yeah, so again, this is the only example of a plan that was put together. It goes with a plan where there would be a commitment to do that. Again, you can do it, it's not something if it's not something you want to do, it's an example of how to do what it is you want to do. And the other thing is, because of changes in state laws, we may have a lot more housing, which would be a lot more fees collected. So just in the conversation, there were assumptions that may not be true. So
Thank you. All right, Councilor Stokes, you have a question for Ms. Plattner, otherwise we're going to go to the list. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of in that same vein of that piece of discussion. I know we all hyper focused on the open space component, but it just popped in my head, like, she was talking about a recreation component in a similar vein, meaning, I think to myself, you're absolutely right. You're not going to purchase a piece of property with the minimal impact fees. But something we would have done is if, for instance, the basketball fences, the court fencing, a perfect example for something like that, where that's a capital improvement. You could have utilized if you had it in a structure, similar vein of an open space, but you had this purpose of use. You could have utilized those funds for that, which is a small fee, in the $20,000-$30,000 range, which you most likely would collect over an 8-year period. And it's in our town parks. So it is, the impact itself is being regenerated back to our community for our citizens to use, and obviously the rest of the public. But so I think if we look at those angles from perspectives that are outside of, I think we just honed in on an open space thing as an example, but that wasn't, there are other ways to look at these things. And, so that was just to the point of this particular thing. I'll have further discussion later when we get to that point.
Thank you. Okay, Counselor Sarah.
Like I've said in the past, I think I still support having an impact fee, but I think it should be used towards recreation. So this past weekend, I was out and about in town, and then the Rip Park was very busy. People hiking on all the different trails. I went to some of the other town open spaces. They're all getting used. So I think the future for us, and there's people moving here for that, is recreation. So I think it's a clear example of what else the impact fee could be used for. Now, I don't know if we want to keep an impact fee because there's been some back and forth about that. And if we don't, that's one thing, but I would support it being towards recreation, and we still need to do the capital improvement plan. That's a given too.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, did anyone sign up to speak? Okay. Is there anyone in attendance that wishes to speak that did not sign up? If so, state your name and address for the record.
Bonnie Van Slyke, Narrow Lane, Charlestown. I don't know why you wouldn't keep it. You need to develop, I think, a 5-year capital plan anyway. You need it for budgeting, you need it for financial planning. This is not specifically for the impact fee. What you decide for the impact fee would be a portion of that plan, but you need the whole plan anyway, but you could start with the portion for recreation. It's not a lot of money, but it's some money. And I think the taxpayers would appreciate, having people contribute to, what they're going to be using. And I don't know, I don't understand what the argument would be not to do it.
Thank you. Okay, so I've got a couple comments on this. So right now we have a moratorium in effect, so we are not collecting the impact fee. And I just want to be clear with everybody that the town has not been in compliance with this impact fee ordinance for about the past 20 years. The way the process is supposed to work is when money has to be allocated to a specific improvement, capital improvement. What has happened in the past is the town would just flow money into the budget and say it was for capital improvements at Charahoe. The requirements of this ordinance were not met. The ordinance as it exists right now specifically says that there needs to be I can read it if anybody wants, but it says there needs to be an agreement that's reached. It says whenever the funds retained, and I'm looking at it's packet page 144, section 218102B. Whenever the funds retained in the Capital Improvement Trust Fund are used for public facilities improvements in the Charahoe Regional School District, the town of Charlestown and the Charahoe Regional School District shall enter into an appropriate memorandum of agreement to assure the proper use of the funds collected pursuant to this ordinance. That was never done, not in any of the times that money came in and went out. The town is responsible for accounting for every penny that comes in and every penny that goes out. And as we stated, after it's not used in 8 years, it needs to go back to the individual that put it in. The town has not had a legitimate 5-year capital improvement plan going back at least 15 years. If you go online and you check previous budgets, and some of them you will see a 5-year capital improvement plan. But if you look from year to year, you will see there is virtually no consistency what exists from year to year. The intent of having a capital improvement plan is that you plan for the upcoming 5 years. And so there should be carry through. If it was in this year's capital improvement plan, say for 2026, when you get to 26, that money should go in the budget and then be expended. That wasn't done. So the town has been in violation of this ordinance for the past at least 15 years. Further, it says that the town council, and I'm looking at 21899, it says a capital improvement impact fee schedule per residential dwelling unit shall be established by the town council annually for the fiscal year as part of the town's adopted capital budget and capital improvement programs and town budget. Again, that has not been done in at least 15 years, if not longer. So why have an ordinance if you're not going to follow it? Going along the same lines, right now we have a moratorium in effect, so we're not collecting any fees. By law, we cannot collect these fees until we meet the provisions of the state law. Capital improvement plan, necessity, needs assessment, and I can get the exact language, but the town hasn't done that. So the town has not been in compliance. So something to consider is if we keep the moratorium, because some people have said, we'll keep the language, but extend the moratorium. So what happens in March of next year? We're going to be in the same boat, extending the same moratorium. If we repeal this ordinance, the language still exists in history. It's just not an active ordinance. So that way, in the future, when we do get the 5-year capital improvement plan and we do the needs assessment, it's very easy to pull this language and then go through and see what still applies. If you go through this ordinance, there are a ton of problems with this. If you look on 218-96D, it specifically says, development of additional dwelling units places additional students in the public schools of the Charahoe Regional School District and the Charlestown school system, necessitating the acquisition of school sites, the expansion of existing educational facilities, the construction of new educational facilities, and improvements and expansion to public facilities owned and are operated by the town of Charlestown. So enrollment is down, as we all know. Enrollment from Charlestown is way down. And if we were to recalculate based on the formula in existence, what we are collecting from impact fees would most likely have to be decreased. Because when this was originally done 25 years ago, our enrollment was approximately 500 kids more than what we have now. So we'd be looking at a decrease in that fee if the town followed the ordinance. If you go down to section F, it says the report entitled Town of Charlestown, Rhode Island Growth Management Program Phase 2 Impact Fees dated February 16th, 2000, that's 25 years old, sets forth a reasonable methodology for analysis for the determination of the impact of a new development on the need for and cost of additional new public facilities in Charlestown. Again, I do not think that is relevant today, and I would say that is outdated. So keeping an ordinance that includes 25-year-old information as the most up-to-date, I do not think is accurate. 21897, intent. The fees established by this article are consistent with and intended to assist in the implementation of the Charlestown Comprehensive Plan. So there was a plan in 2000, 2002. We are now in 2025. So the latest plan was adopted in 2021. I do not believe that the fee established by this article and are consistent with and intended to assist in the implementation of the Charlestown Comprehensive Plan from 2021. It goes on, 2018-99, the computation of the amount of the impact fees. This is the one where it says the requirement of funds for provisions of public facilities shall be based upon needs as established by the capital budget, which doesn't exist, and the capital improvement programs, which doesn't exist, and the town of Charlestown and or the Charahoe Regional School District, and shall be consistent with the policy stated therein. Well, they don't exist, so the policies are not stated therein. The building official is charged with the administration of the section. Okay, that's fine. It says the fee shall be based upon the following: A capital improvement impact fee schedule per residential dwelling unit shall be established by the town annually for the fiscal year as part of the town's adopted capital budget, capital improvement programs and town budget. There's no capital budget, there's no capital improvement program. I mean, I could go on, but I think my point is this. And so I guess just something for the town council to consider. If we continue the moratorium and do nothing with this, we're not working on a needs assessment. So in March of next year, that will expire. We cannot keep this as is because we are not in compliance with what is here. And that was one of the things, the whole reason why we started looking at this is because we're not in compliance and people could come and say to the town, we want our money back because you collected it under obsolete information and you are not in compliance with your own ordinance. So what's the difference if we continue the moratorium or if we repeal this? We do the correct calculations, we figure out the correct way, and then we come up with a new ordinance that is actually accurate and correct. Because what this is no reflection on what is accurate, correct, or up-to-date information. So, yes, go ahead.
Oh, you wanted to,
Do you want to go? It's public.
it doesn't
Public
matter.
hearing.
I just have some questions. First of all, it seems to me that Charahoe does have a capital improvement plan. That because we're a regional district, the superintendent is basically the department head for the school. And based on that plan, the superintendent submits a bill to Charlestown. We agreed to add a middle school. We agreed to add the Kayla addition to the middle school. We have invested quite heavily, even though, we don't have, a lot of more and more children there. Those facilities do exist and we have agreed to pay for them. And the request has come from the superintendent to the school. And there has been agreements to do those buildings. So I don't quite understand that it's been all, not in compliance, but that's just me, The other thing is, I don't understand what the penalty is to have an ordinance if you're not, we're not in violation of state law because we're not collecting the fees. The ordinance sits there. It may not be in compliance. It could be brought in compliance, within the time period with a little work. And the other question that I have is, when will we have a capital improvement plan? It was promised with the budget last year. I assume somebody's been working on it. When will the town have it?
Okay, so do you want me to take your questions in order?
Sure.
Okay, so you asked, what was your first question? It was about the impact fees. Oh, and the money going into Charahoe. So,
And the superintendent being the department head requesting that.
yep. So based on the ordinance, one of the things we need to look at is the total capital costs. When this ordinance was originally enacted, Charahoe had and I don't remember the exact amount, millions of dollars building plan. There has not been a large approved building plan from Charahoe in a number of years. The last one was about 15 million. If we were to look
The
at that,
Kayla one, when was that? The addition to the middle school?
and how much was that?
I do not remember,
I believe it was less than the 15 million. The most recent one that was
but
approved.
I do remember being on the council when it happened, so it's been recent.
Okay, so the most recent bond that was approved by the voters was last year for approximately $15 million. So that would be what we would look at. If we were to calculate,
But okay.
so you can't make up the rules as you go. We need to follow the ordinance.
This
So
is something that you
so
can,
listen, you
work
asked the
with your
questions.
solicitor.
You want the
Yeah.
answers to the questions.
I don't understand the reasoning.
So the reason is we cannot continue this ordinance as it is because we are not, as I have explained previously through all the examples that I gave, the reasons why we are not in compliance. We don't have a needs assessment. Our town administrator has been working on the capital improvement plan, and seeing as though he's starting from scratch because there had not been one, it is taking a little bit longer than was expected. But there also needs to be the needs assessment and everything else that goes along. But my question is, right now, we're not collecting the fees, so there's no money coming in.
And we're not in violation.
Okay, so if you let me continue.
I will.
So we are not collecting the fees. The moratorium is in effect so that we are not in violation. If we continue this moratorium, we have until March of next year. If we were to come into compliance all of a sudden, this ordinance still needs to be modified because there are so many problems with it. So does it make more sense just to leave on the moratorium, wait at some point if it gets done, and then we come back and we revisit the whole thing? Or we just repeal it? Either way, we're not collecting the money. And then when we do have the needs assessment, the capital improvement plan, then we reinstate it so that it is in compliance with what we're actually doing. If we were to just leave the moratorium on, come up with a capital improvement plan, it's okay, now we've got one, here, this ordinance is back, we would still need to go and modify this. So the end result is the same. Either way, we're not collecting the money. If we repeal this whole thing, when we do come back with one, we can make it so it is a legitimate ordinance that we will actually take into account our real life situation that we're in today, and we can make it so that is a workable ordinance. But right now, this whole thing needs to be, I'd say 90% of it needs to be replaced. So why continue the moratorium knowing at some point you're going to come back and modify this, or just come back with a whole new correct
I
ordinance
think
in
it's
the
a
future?
commitment to.
So let me finish and then you may have the floor. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. I think I made it pretty clearly based on what was in here. And now if you have a follow-up question.
I think that maintaining the ordinance, maintaining the moratorium, knowing that you'll come back and revise the ordinance is a commitment that you want to collect impact fees. And I do believe that that's what the taxpayers of this town deserve.
Thank you. And I would just say, I don't see having an obsolete ordinance is going to give anybody any kind of commitment, because I'm not going to commit to breaking the law. Counselor Sarah?
You know, I'm so sick and tired of this. I'm tired of the dissertation of what went wrong. Okay? This council needs to decide how they're going to move forward. I'm tired of hearing about the past. I think I've heard this dissertation 10 times in 3 years. Okay? I'm tired of hearing the dissertation about the past. This council needs to agree whether they want to have an impact fee. Okay? And then once they agree they want to have an impact fee, they need to figure out how they're going to put it together. And forget the past. Just take the cut the table, done. That's over here. Let's move forward. So we're either going to get rid of this ordinance or we're going to move forward and fix it. Just make up your minds. I've been to plenty of meetings with the administrator and Ken, and we've gone over how to calculate it. We have like 5 different methods of calculating it. We're just sitting here spinning our wheels talking about a dissertation of the past. We going to move forward or we aren't? That's what we need to decide. It's that simple.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Stokes?
Sure. Yeah, I'll echo that and I'll go one step further and I'll say we can solve one of these problems right now. I'll make a motion that the administrator have 6 months to return with a 5-year capital improvement plan. Well, it's in the vein of that. It's literally in the vein of this because it's going to relate directly to the impact fees as well as the needs assessment. He has staff, he has time, he has an office, and I will give him the latitude to do that and return, because I've been hearing the same thing over and over again as well, and I've been hearing 15 years we haven't done this. Well, this council, with the exception of Mr. Marr and Mr. Sloan, this council's just as much to blame. We've been here 2.5, almost 3 years, and we haven't done it either. So we keep talking, well, what if, and you've said it yourself, well, what if we come back in March and then it's still not done? No, it should be done. Here's the date, make this happen. This is the directive from the council. We are the policy setting body of this town. That is the directive. Come back, return to us with this document, a 5-year, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be great. Come back with a document that says, here's our capital improvement plan, here's the needs assessment, and then we can make a reevaluation. And the same thing, I have to agree with this impacting. If we completely repeal an ordinance, exactly what happens to everything else in town government across the board for 20 years, 30 years, probably in the history of the government, is it gets forgotten. It gets lost. How many times have we had something that nobody even thought of again, and it just disappears because there's so many moving parts that continue to go on over and over again? At the bare minimum, at least if a moratorium runs out, it's automatically going to come back up to be revisited by a council. At the end of the day, this continues to be a concern. This continues to be a discussion about capital improvement plans, especially because it's required and we need it. So just do it. And again, I will make that motion. I believe it's within the vein of this agenda that the administrator has 6 months to return with a 5-year capital improvement plan and a needs assessment for the town of Charlestown. And that will be directly related to how we can view this, and perhaps we can move the moratorium up. Perhaps we can address this earlier. There is no reason why we can't do it. We have an incredibly professional staff. We have a staff that has an incredible amount of knowledge, and it can be done, and it should be done. And that's it, and put the date on it. Do it. That's my motion.
All right, so hold on. Attorney Ruggiero, is that a legitimate motion for the way the agenda is advertised?
No, because this is a matter before you as an amendment to the zoning ordinance. It's here as a public hearing for that. So your choices are vote on it, continue it, but you can't add things.
Okay. And in 2 weeks, we'll have this discussion.
Okay, yes, sir.
Mike Marcellinus, Charlestown Beach Road. If somebody does an ADU, does the impact fee apply to the ADU?
No. Attorney
No.
Ruggiero?
They're just developments.
You have a moratorium, so it doesn't
Well,
matter.
Yeah, but if it was on.
Language doesn't, correct?
Right,
Language
but-
doesn't. So
I don't
more
believe,
people, more people coming in, more people using septic, more people using the senior center in theory, but no impact fee on those. So I'm just,
So I want to hold you up, Attorney Ruggiero, that is correct, right? If the moratorium were not in effect, then there would be no.
I don't know.
I mean, it says exemptions.
So that, what I can tell you is they're not collecting a fee from anybody for any residential development.
yeah, I was just looking at the exemptions, alterations or expansion or construction of accessory buildings, which is kind of loosely, I don't know, defined. So I was just bringing that up as it seems kind of counterintuitive to not apply an impact fee to more people coming in. I think it should just be based on the number of bedrooms in the septic system and not acreage or anything else.
I believe if I read it correctly is somewhere is that what's exempt is affordable housing. Can't be charged. Affordable housing units can't be charged the impact fee.
So it says the following shall be exempted from payment of the capital improvement impact fee. Any claim of exemption must be made no later than the time of application. It says alterations or expansion of an existing residence, the construction of accessory buildings or structures, the replacement of a destroyed or partially destroyed residential building, and non-residential buildings and structures are exempt. So in the current ordinance, that's what's there.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. I believe under state law is where I read that.
For the senior, I mean, for the affordable.
Yeah, but
You
that's
can't apply it to affordable. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So that's the only one I know that's.
Councilor Mark?
I agree with the sentiment of Councilor Sarah and Councilor Stokes in the sense that we just need to pan a stake and move forward and stop kicking stuff down the road. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But at the same time, I think the discussion on impact fees in general is a good one. And I think we probably should have impact fees. But I think that this ordinance as it stands is just, what's the point of keeping it? Why don't we do it all encompassing? If we're gonna put it the incumbent upon the town administrator to come up with a capital plan, and we're gonna put it on the tax assessor to come up with the fee structure, why wouldn't we put it incumbent upon ourselves to bring up and create a new ordinance? Well, why are we saying, well, it might be forgotten? Well, that's our responsibility not to forget it. So to keep this one that is 90% unusable because we have an opportunity to amend it makes no sense. Just do away with it and let us create simultaneously the proper ordinance when we have the right information and current facts in front of us.
I've got a question for Mr. Allen. So when we had one of our workshops on this issue, the cost of doing the needs assessment came up. And I believe our town administrator reached out to Hopkinton, who recently completed theirs. Could you just let us know what that cost?
Right, so I'm a little late on the discussion, but I have a couple of comments on this. Other than that, if I can.
Yep, you have the floor.
So, yes, Hopkinton is in the process of doing theirs. It's 73,000, if I can remember. That's a new growth management plan. Within a growth management plan, you have a needs assessment. This is my understanding of impact fees. I could be wrong. Before we do anything, we need to decide what our needs are. It's not relative to the school anymore. So we need to do a plan, whether it's in-house or out-house, right? We either spend the money on Weston and Sampson, or we do it inside, right? We have to determine what our needs are, right? Then, what are we gonna focus on, right? Once we decide, you got to understand that a 5-year capital improvement plan is different than a 5-year capital improvement plan for this program. It's two different animals. A CIP, capital improvement plan, is for all town government, I mean, buildings, vehicles, et cetera, right? This 5-year capital improvement plan that we're talking about over and over again is relative to what our needs are. It's two separate animals. I'm working on a CIP for the whole town. That has nothing to do with capital improvement plans. You have to determine what your needs are first. So someone has to do that, whether it's an outside agency or an in-house group. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did. And that, when we had one of our workshops, the issue about doing it in-house came up. And what you are describing is far more intense than, the surface capital improvement plan. And that's why we decided that if we were to go forward with this, then it would cost, and I believe at the time you said approximately $100,000 or so, but seeing Hopkinton's was 73,000, it's in the same ballpark. I mean, it's a considerable amount of money. So just something for the council, to consider. Counselor Sarah.
Has anybody asked the town planner, the new town planner, if he has worked on any of these in his other jobs? To see whether it's a project that he could take on with the assistance of whoever he needs. So,
I can definitely get into that with him. He is new.
Yep.
Has he worked one in the past? I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But if you're suggesting we have the staff here to do it, perhaps we do. It's one or the other. We either do it in-house or we hire a consultant. First and foremost, what are our needs? Student enrollment is down. What are our needs? Is it relative to rescue? Our population is getting older. What are our needs? We can't just make it up in a vacuum. We have to determine what our needs are.
well,
Then we can build on it. Then you focus your 5-year capital improvement plan on those needs.
Counselor Sarah?
we just had a plan done for the Ninigrit Park master plan. Okay, there's your needs. It's sitting here right in front of you. It's right there. I don't know, we approve the plan, accept the plan, whatever you want to call it. We have a plan. There's your need. Here in this town, your future infrastructure is probably going to be based around Ninigrit Park, unless you maybe have a open space component included. But your needs, because you don't have roads, you don't have sewer, you don't have public water, those things are off the table. And in the state legislation that allows us to do this, it includes recreation. So we as a policymakers decide if we're going to do this or not.
Attorney Ruggiero?
I just want to be clear, because it's not just needs in the future. You have to have this needs assessment. It has to distinguish needs in the future from new development. It's not just needs for the current citizen. So you can't just use something and adapt it. It has to be done just for that. You have to look at what your comprehensive plan is projecting for future residential growth. And then you have to calculate what the needs of all that future residential growth is going to put on your community in terms of new capital expenditures, whatever they may be. That's what this is supposed to do. And, I know there's a lot of talk, some of it's missing that point, but that's the focus. That's why it costs so much money to do these things. And if the staff does it, it's going to take time. That's all. I want you to appreciate those values you're getting into.
Yeah, I have no issue with the time component. I fully get that. So I don't have we're going to have this in 2 months. But I believe if Jeff were to work with the town staff and with you, I believe you folks can come up with an answer. Can we do this in-house or can't we? Because that's like the first question. If we can do it in-house, we save a lot of money. If we can't, then we have to decide if we're going to move forward and spend $70-something thousand.
All right, so wait a minute, we got public comment, then I've got Counselor Marr, then Counselor Stokes.
Again, the open space impact fee had an open space plan, which was a needs assessment. So again, you don't have to do it on that topic, but it's an example of how to do it on a narrow topic, which isn't everything you need in town. And there was, the needs assessment where you decide how much you need and why. And then there was a proportionate share, and that's how it was, the need for, that's caused by that development. So again, I didn't write the law, or I don't know if it's changed since that one was done, but it was definitely the newer version of the law. Whether Sam did it right or not, I don't know, but it's close. So you do have an example.
Thank you. Mr. Marcellinus, then Counselor Mar, then Counselor Stokes.
So did I hear it would cost $75,000 to get a plan to make this legal to then collect about 30 or 40,000 a year?
So it was, what did we collect, 18,000 last year, or something like that? Yeah, so, and that was when we had one of our workshops, that was one of the cost benefit analysis, is if it was gonna cost, and we, at the
Every 5
time,
years.
every 5 years, it needs to be updated, yes. So you're spending about 73,000 to get 73,000, yes.
It's a good deal for the planners, but. Okay.
Yeah. All right, Counselor Mar.
Well, just to that point, that was where I came to the conclusion initially that, about the impact fees, that it just didn't, the cost benefit analysis didn't make a whole lot of sense. That said, we're really conflating two issues here. The issue on the agenda tonight is what are we going to do about this ordinance? Are we going to vote it to continue it as a moratorium, or are we going to vote it to do away with it? The issues surrounding the 5-year capital plan and what we should have, and should it be open space or should it be recreational? Those are good discussions, and it sounds like Councilor Stokes is going to put something on the agenda for the next meeting that will make that discussion more solid. And by that time, perhaps Administrator Allen will have even more information for us. But right now, I think we're supposed to be voting on whether we want to continue with this ordinance or not. I mean, all the other stuff is secondary.
Thank you. Counselor Stokes?
You know what? In lieu of what was just said, yep, I'll make a motion that we, if there's no other discussion, that we continue the moratorium on the impact fees
Until what date?
till March. No, I'm sorry, the moratorium's already in place. So then I would say we take no action.
So is your motion to continue this until the next council meeting? Is that?
Well, the moratorium's in place, so there's no reason to keep the public hearing open since we have a whole bunch of other things to do in between with this capital improvement plans and things that are outside of that, that encompass this, but are also outside of that. So you can close the public hearing with no action, and then the moratorium stays and everything stays as it is. You're still not collecting the fee. And then we'll revisit it when that ends in March, and hopefully we'll have more information, meaning we'll have.
To
Hold
reject
on,
the
hold on,
amendments?
hold on, you don't have the floor. Counselor Stokes?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I was gonna go into more with the consultant part, but you're absolutely right. And we'll deal with that stuff later. But no, I don't see that we need any action whatsoever because it's there and the public hearing closes. If no action is taken by the council, the moratorium remains in place. There's no change to the ordinance. So it's a closed public hearing. We've done that many times with other things that didn't go through, like the subdivision stuff. Once
Yeah.
the meeting's closed. So then let me rephrase that. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion from Counselor Stokes to close the public hearing. Is there a second? All right, hearing no second, that motion fails. Counselor Sarah, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we repeal the ordinance. If you go to the very first page, it says Exhibit A, 218-95 through 153, as perfect example. You make this reserved until we fix it.
So your,
Because we all agree that this ordinance as written is useless for the most part. So just do away with it and put a reserve in the, like we do in other sections of the 28, because this is a 218. Yeah, this is a 218. We just put reserved and just do away with it for now. And then we work on figuring out whether or not we can do the growth management plan, do a capital improvement plan that relates to an impact fee and a needs assessment and see if we can do that in-house or not, and then go from there. So I think just get rid of this.
so then your motion would then be, and we'll talk this through to make sure, it would be to approve ordinance number 430, amending chapter 218 zoning impact fees, because by approving this ordinance, it is striking this
Yeah.
language. Okay, so Counselor Sarah has made a motion to
Second.
approve ordinance 430, amending chapter 218 zoning impact fees. So a motion from Counselor Sarah, second from Counselor Mar. further discussion. So that would repeal this ordinance. I mean, it would repeal the language, is what I mean to say. So by approving this ordinance, the language goes away. And then we can take the time and we'll put it on a future agenda to get an answer from the town administrator about having staff in-house do it, and then we can go from there. Okay, further discussion? Anyone else? Okay, so as this is an ordinance, so everyone is clear, if we approve this ordinance, then the language goes away.
Yes.
All right. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Marr,
Yes.
Counselor Sarah,
Yes.
Counselor Slow.
Yes.
Counselor Stowe,
No.
Counselor Carney.
Yes, so with a vote of